welcome to the Economic Times IT Security Forum, a CEO's Imperative. I'm Chandra Srikanth from ET Now, and I'll be moderating this very special panel today to really give you a perspective of where we stand as far as data and cybersecurity is concerned. But let me really kick this off with Christopher Young, the Global Head for Intel Security. Christopher, give us a perspective of the global trends that you're seeing and how this really applies to India.
Absolutely. Well, number one, thank you for hosting this, and thanks to everyone for making time. It's such an important topic. There's just a tremendous amount of change and complexity in the IT environment. You see it everywhere, and I think even this panel represents a lot of the change and the amazing growth that we're seeing in the broader e-commerce space and IoT, and that creates a tremendous amount of opportunity, but also complexity from an IT perspective. The second area is our adversaries. They're moving faster than we've ever seen. The changing nature of the attack patterns is unlike anything we've ever seen. In fact, we just took some quick looks at the data that we have. Just in the last 6 months, we've seen over 37 million malware infections in mobile devices alone, and we just published that in our
And everyone's betting on mobile internet, right?
And with mobile internet happening so quickly and growing so fast here in India, I think that's a relevant thing for us to look at, because I think traditionally we've thought about malware attacks as something that only happen on PCs, but it does happen on mobile devices as well, so we have to be careful. We have to think about that. When you bring it back down to India, I think many of the cybersecurity challenges that we see around the world are just as relevant in India as they are in any other part of the globe, whether that's in the United States, Europe, parts of Europe, or other parts of Asia.
Right, thanks for that. KK, give us some perspective on that. Have the adversaries changed, and how has IT services dealt with this compared to, say, a decade back? How have the solutions really changed?
I think this is an area which is getting a lot of attention. As a part of the NASSCOM Executive Council, we met Prime Minister Modi on 2nd of March last year. He clearly articulated that cybersecurity is to become a priority of the Indian industry, so there's a lot of efforts coming in that way. But in a larger context, looking at Chris' point, I think what is a concept is that the attacker has it much easier than the defender, because he looks at vulnerabilities in one part of an IT infrastructure or architecture and is able to attack that, whereas as a defender, I need to know the entire landscape. So talent, as well as the ability to look at entire architectures and how do we protect it, and how do we build talent, capacity, capability, tools and intellectual property, which will really help us address it in a holistic manner, has really been the response of the IT industry.
Right. I also want to get in a couple of consumer internet companies, because this will be very relevant to people who shop frequently on your platforms. How has Big Basket and Urban Ladder dealt with this issue? Have there been instances, where you've had to grapple with a challenge with respect to cybersecurity, and what are the learnings? Pramod, if we can start with you, Big Basket.
Sure. So as internet is becoming more prevalent and e-commerce is becoming more prevalent, sites like Big Basket do come under the radar for attacks. At any given point of time, even as we speak, there will be an attack going on. So we have what we call the web firewalls, as well as variety of our infrastructure is heavily protected, and we take this thing very seriously. And as pointed out by KK as well as Chris, what happens is that the environment becomes complex, and with variety of software versions, right? Each one of those things have different vulnerabilities. So you have to, and the attacker may know that, okay, this version of software has this vulnerability. And so we need to have a constant check on our audits on our own infrastructure to make sure, are we complying with the latest security updates, patches, right? And are we doing whatever we can? And these attacks don't just come from India, they come all over the world.
Right. Apurva, what is your own experience?
Yeah, I think...
have you had disgruntled customers of Urban Ladder doing something like that?
Not a whole lot, and not definitely because of security, but as e-commerce company that's focused on homes, we know a lot about the consumers, in the sense that they are kind of giving us a lot of the data and it's upon us to make sure that we protect that data
Right,
to
and
the
also
utmost
the
level, right?
transaction per unit is much higher for you.
That's
compared
right. So
to-
we have a very big basket size, right? We kind of can tell, depending on what the consumer is trying to find on our site, what they're doing, whether they're trying to buy a new home, they're renovating their home. So, you know, for us, cybersecurity is of utmost importance. And like Chris said correctly, right? Other part that has changed in this whole game is the mobile phone. There's so much data on the mobile phone for each and every consumer. How do we make sure that we protect that? Urban Ladder, for example, does a lot of actual transactions on the mobile phone. So I think we have to attack it on all fronts. And yes, it's always a moving target. Like Chris again said, that adversaries are getting better at this. So we have to constantly think of security as a key part of our platform, along with, you know, things like scale and just, you know, customer delight, things like that. I think it is right there with all those important things.
Right. Atul, I mean, Quicker, like many other companies, you know, has really been pushing the app, the mobile strategy. But the downside to that, as Chris said, is the increasing instances of malware that pops up on mobile. Have you experienced that, and how are you going about countering it?
For us, it's a user-generated content, which makes the job slightly tougher from the other perspective, because I could be like a person who doesn't have a product, but he has still come on the site and trying to sell it. And we have these people sitting in or sitting in India maybe and trying to sell their phone, and then people have actually given them maybe 5,000 rupees and stuff like that. So those kind of instances. So we have a fairly strong content moderation team which is backed by technology. So so as soon as some listings come onto the site, they go through some engines, and this engine actually gives us signals to the moderation team saying that please check the following things as far as this listing is concerned. And then if those checks fail, then the listings are not allowed to go onto the site. So we have to ensure that our brand from that perspective is actually protected. So,
right, thanks for that. So stepping back from, you know, the new age to some of the more traditional industries, I want to start with Volvo. I mean, there are examples online where, you know, people use a computer to kill an engine of a car on the road. New age challenges, you know, because of machine learning and AI. How are you really going about countering it, and what has your own experience been when it comes to data security?
Yeah, see, as far as the manufacturing industry is concerned, technology is what defines our leadership, and it's pertinent for the products that we are marketing today, as well as the products that we are going to market in future. And it is pertinent to protect the technology that is going into the future in the pipeline under development. And as far as this process is concerned, it is the whole thing is as strong as the last man or the last link. So while we look at protecting the infrastructure, developing the infrastructure, maintaining the sanctity, we also need to look at the process and the people. So that is what is very important.
Right. Mr. Shivramakrishnan, your own perspective from healthcare, because now a lot of hospitals are increasingly embracing machine learning for some of their procedures. But the downside to this could also be that you expose yourself to more threats. So how are you countering that?
See, healthcare is a pretty personal subject, so nobody wants their state of health ad in public. But times are changing, and there is a lot of retail consumer effect that is also being expected out of healthcare. And we are all talking about access to healthcare. So we are kind of in a situation where we necessarily have to embrace digital technologies. We have to use the power of the web. But at the same time, I think the pressure to keep that data element secure, and also to ensure that the right information is only given and the entire health information is not distributed, and huge pressure in terms of authentication and validation of not just the medium of information, but also to whom it is being communicated, the sender and the receiver. So I would say huge pressure to keep healthcare safe, but at the same time not lose the opportunity to embrace the digital wave. So each transaction, each nature of transaction needs to be looked at, governance patterns around each to be looked at. So sometimes it makes it look more complicated than we need to make it, but absolutely necessary given that it's a very personal element, and we need to respect that privacy, at the same time deliver the best healthcare as quickly as possible.
Right.
And quickly means digital, and
right.
you can't shy away from that.
Right. Subramaniam, how would this apply to the liquor industry?
So our case is little different because alcohol is a very state-controlled subject as well, and that industry itself is controlled heavily. But having said that, digital is key for us because the traditional mass media or the medium of advertising communication is no more there in our industry. So digital is key, and therefore security imperatives come in. Second is that we store a lot of customers to consumer data, right? We collect a lot of them, store them, permissioned data, right? Enabling that very securely for the right usage is very critical. That's second. Having said that, even within the company, within the industry, security is not new, I would say. Early 2000 when internet became all pervasive, security also started. It started with antivirus, patching, slowly. But today, the imperatives are very different. People carry a mobile phone, people carry an iPad or equivalent, people carry a laptop, then there is wireless, mobile internet, the whole works are there. Then, you then add many tools. So you put an MDM to secure your mobile device, to secure somebody's tablet, then wireless is secured through firewall. So you have a plethora of tools, plethora of processes, therefore each tool creates its own processes and nuances, and therefore to manage that is a big challenge. Get all of them to a single screen or a single dashboard, and to manage that is a big task.
Steve, you've got the global perspective from Chris, and you've also got a sense of the challenges that sectors face here. How different is it, from the US, or are these problems fairly common? The solutions also common? From your own observations, if you can just help us.
Sure, I think it's a little of both. I think there's definitely some unique aspects of every region, but in general, the problems that we hear from this panel are very similar to what we hear around the globe. Part of what we're hearing in many different sectors as it applies to the Internet of Things is devices that use technology that was developed many years ago that was never intended to be connected to a global network is all of a sudden now becoming connected. And whether it's automotive or industrial or healthcare, that's making it such that if there was a vulnerability in technology that wasn't intended to be connected, it actually didn't matter up until now when we're adding that connectivity. And so we're at a very pivotal point in time where we're seeing the attacks grow from just being targeting traditional business environments to really targeting everything in the physical world. It's really where the digital world and physical world are starting to meet, and that's going to create both some big challenges, but also some big opportunities for us to use creativity as the security industry partnering with these industries to actually solve these problems.
Right. Chris, how much can you realistically do to counter, these organized groups or smart groups?
I think there's a lot that can be done. One of the big things that we're trying to do at Intel Security is really to automate a lot of the work that customers need to do. I mean, it's been one of the big challenges in cybersecurity is that, a lot of vendors like us have shown up for years with a product for this and a product for that, and it just feeds into a lot of the complexity. And one of the ways we're approaching it today is through a solutions focus and really trying to help customers get to a series of outcomes, which is, at the end of the day, if you're running a business, that's what you care about, is how do I get to the right security outcome that I'm looking for. And I think that's the evolution that the security industry is going to go through. And if we're going to do a better job of being either architected into the solutions, as KK talked about, or we've got to make that leap, and that's a big focus area for us. And I think if we do that effectively, we'll help the ecosystem, diversity of different companies, governmental organizations, do a much better job of what we call really the threat defense lifecycle, which is protect against as much as you can, detect what you can't protect, and then correct, fix it at the end of the day. And if you do that effectively and move quickly, organizations can be quite effective at protecting themselves ultimately against attackers achieving their mission. They might get in, but they probably won't get the information they want or the level of disruption that they might be seeking.
Right.
So it's possible.
Right. KK, you mentioned the Data Security Council of India initiative by NASSCOM, but in terms of what the government can do in this space, or should the government not do something in this space, what's your own take?
So clearly the government can play a role in raising awareness towards how important cybersecurity is. I think it's a reality for convenience purposes. More and more consumers are going to use internet and devices, or buy from Big Basket or from Urban Ladder or from Quicker. So the government should educate people in terms of the importance of cybersecurity and what precaution the consumer needs to take. Because many times, if you go back, there is also a certain default from the consumer side. Thankfully, I think in India, at least on the financial transaction side, concepts like two-factor authentication really try and build the level of security much more. So in a way, I think we are better than some of the Western counterparts on that. So I think the government should think in terms of how do they try and make transactions secure for the consumers. On the second level, I think organizations like DSCI can really educate organizations that to try and prevent an attack, technology is just one element of it. And like Chris said, yes, vendors bring in a lot of tools, and service vendors like Mindtree implement that and make money out of it. But none of us are advising organizations to say technology is only one element of it. What is important is real-time monitoring and really trying to make sense of some of the data which is coming out of it. That again is a key area where enterprises, service providers and technology providers need to be cognizant about.
What has your experience been, Atul, in terms of predicting the signals? How successful has Quicker been in that aspect?
So obviously the intent out there is to the team which is kind of like trending. So you can always run some, while we can have hackathons, etc. You can also run your internal contest around, like whosoever is able to find a signal and see the impact around it. So those kind of incentive rewards we keep on running within our system to ensure that we are actually trying to catch that thing. But you know what, one of the other things which is also very important is while we talk about data security from that perspective, but then a fairly simple thing is like when you have access cards in our company, right, there always a big problem of tailgating which is happening now. Anybody can just come in, put in a laptop and take the data, and then they are gone from that perspective. So I think security needs to be something as an individual in the company, everybody should understand that. So education becomes extremely important from that perspective. Like what Steve mentioned about education or bringing the human element together, all those factors I think become very important from that perspective.
Mr. Krishnamurthy, would your experience be different? Because companies such as yours, Apollo, are working with specialists, with external agencies, so the internal threat may not be that high. But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I would put it the other way. Actually, the internal threat is quite high.
Okay, even for...
While we are integrated, there is always the external threat, but the internal threat is very significant. And more importantly, I would like to touch upon the aspect which you asked about the government initiatives.
Right.
In fact, while we bring in a brand image of Brand India, it is very important for the government also. If we say that in India the internet is prevalent for the last about 15 years, more so the people have started talking about hacking, loss of data only in the last about 7 to 8 years probably, not beyond. And it is very important for the government agencies also to develop competencies. And secondly, for the government to government, across continents, across governments, to have that kind of protocols to check and warn industry, to protect our own
in
brand
terms of
image
intelligence
as well as
sharing,
the corporate values.
Right.
Yeah, that is going to be actually very significant in our road ahead.
Mr. Shivramakrishnan.
No, I also agree that I think insider
Feel
threat
free to disagree as well.
No, it is.
You don't have to agree all the time.
It is insider threat that is more, I would say, important, because how many PCs do you just leave unlocked? As much as I can say that all the services companies should provide the best service and the product company should give the best product, I think a lot comes from inside. Every USB port, every switch, every router is a point of threat, and a misconfigured Nothing is wrong. We probably got all the solutions, just that we don't know how to use them, or we've not maximized. We've not educated our people enough and made them conscious of the consequence. And I think you used the right word, to help people. I think that concept of help needs to become a little more formal, because sometimes help crosses the boundaries, and it either the wrong person in the guise of helping is doing the wrong activity. How can I have the wrong clinical person placing a clinical order on a patient in the guise of helping? So role based access, who are you, why are you accessing the system, for what is this information given to you, all that needs to be very, very essentially imbibed into the culture. And definitely when we work with product companies, when we work with service, if we can look at outcome driven activity, a 360 of it, as opposed to buying a product, installing it and expecting magic to automatically happen and feeling, if I've got all the products, that means I'm secure.
You're insulated.
On the other side, I think product companies demand that out of us, saying yes, we'll get into an outcome driven if you are willing to offer the following controls from your side and not the T's and C's from our side either. I think that holy handshake, we are good to go.
Okay. Mr. Subramanian, your experience?
Couple of years back, we just gave only an access card to an identified individual, and then said, you go and find out what all can you get from within the company, right? Now he had his mobile phone, trusted individual whom we engaged. He went to the R&D center and then spoke to a couple of them, and then you would be amazed to see the kind of information they divulged on the project that they were working, how it is going to impact the market. That is how internal threats are. One is internal threats which are technology, the other is internal threats what people can talk, right? People need to understand some of these are confidential and they are not supposed to utter beyond their workplace, right? You can do so much in technology, 60%, 70% you can protect. Other protection comes from people themselves. They need to ensure that they don't utter a word outside.
Right.
Correct? You go to meeting rooms, you can find marketing strategies, post a meeting, all PowerPoint
Written on,
printout, or whiteboards, PowerPoint printouts lying around.
That's actually a good source of information
That's
for journalists.
a good source of information for everybody, correct? So those are the other aspects one should focus. How much ever you do in technology, you can only do so much.
Right. Thanks so much, everyone. This has been a very insightful panel that really brings us to the end. We certainly hope the insights and perspectives will help you build a more secure digital environment.
We are witnessing a very interesting situation in India. Every second there are 3 new people experiencing internet for the first time. And guess what? They're leapfrogging to mobile. They're using mobile as their source to really go and connect to internet. At the same time, we are seeing services of government and corporates moving to cloud. In this scenario, we believe that security, the way it was consumed, the way it was deployed, is going to get redefined. So we feel it's a great time to really come and engage with the customers, engage with the business owners, CEOs, really tell them about these paradigm shifts in security.